Welcome to SpanReads, not your typical rereads podcast, a 17th Shard series where we reread the Cosmere and are giant nerds about it. Today, we are talking about characters and relationships within the Way of King. Joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm your writer.
David.
I am Windrunner on the forums and Discord.
Joshua.
I am Jofwu.
And I am firstRainbowRose. This episode will have spoilers for the Way of Kings only. Awesome. So characters and relationships.
So we should start with the elephant in the room, which is Kaladin, because he's the protagonist. Like, he carries this book like a bridge upon his back.
Oh, boo.
I like it.
He has like 60% of the word count, I think, maybe more. 70%. He has a lot.
We can check our statistical analysis on the copyright.
Yeah.
Quick plug.
Okay. So not quite 60%, but present day Kaladin has 33%, and flashback Kaladin has about 10%, which is still
Quite
an
a lot.
overwhelmingly large amount of the book comparatively, compared to Dawnshard at 22, almost 23, and Shallan at 17.
Okay. Well, that seems only fitting for someone like Kaladin to have just a little extra space in this book. And, you know, back when the book came out, they were always talking about, Brandon mentioned a second Kaladin flashback book. Still wouldn't be mad about it.
Yeah.
Other people would be, but
I
will.
had, because
You want the flashbacks of the other characters more.
yes, he is such a good character, and such a believable character. Like, he has clinical depression and seasonal affective disorder, and a lot of people can empathize with that. And it's, as someone who doesn't have depression, it's interesting to get insight into how that actually makes your life feel. It's not great. Like, I feel sorry for you, Kaladin. I just want to make you happy.
That's one thing that I do love, though, is because, you know, Kaladin does have depression, but it's not like, I was slightly not looking forward to mopey Kaladin, is the way that I was remembering him being, because it's been a while. And I remembered him being a lot more mopey at the beginning, but his depression manifests in not as mopey of a way, which is very nice.
And he starts taking actions pretty quick. As soon as he changes his mind at Honor Chasm, that's not to say there aren't a few steps back, but he does start becoming a much more active and kind of positive facing character while he's got a goal, which makes sense. And I also kind of had forgotten how apparent it is, and this is a good thing, that he's not at the end of his journey when it's all over. Like, he's still got so much anger. He's not like crushed the depression, which I think is a huge thing that Brandon nailed, is that he's not like, it would have been very easy to have had Kaladin be depressed in this book and then been like, and then he still has it, I guess, but we don't need to worry about it anymore, you know? And I think that at the end you can tell that he's better, but he's not conquered everything that he's got to deal with.
I really liked seeing Kaladin from Dalinar's POV this time, at the end of the book, like after he's like saved them all. And Dalinar does not see him the way that, like, we as the reader, the way that I see him, knowing what's in his brain, seeing all these things, like, he's just like this hero. He's amazing. And then Dalinar looks at him and he's just kind of like, I don't know, he's like not in a good mood. You can tell he doesn't really, respect Dalinar like all that much. There's a lot of growth that's still there that you can see in from Dalinar's eyes. That is pretty cool.
And it's like, Dalinar like describes him as the youth, like, during the battle. I'm like, and it's like, yes, Kaladin is super young. It is from, like, when I first read this book, like, I was right around Kaladin's age, and now I'm older than Kaladin is. And like, yeah, like, he is very young. Like, oh my God.
I forgot he's 19. Like, I really was like, oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. Like, it's 19 turning 20. And it's like, Well, and yet you are, like, in charge of people. Like, okay.
He's been through so much that it's really hard to, like, wrap your mind around how young he is with everything that he's had to deal with.
I know. And it definitely, when you think about it like that, like Ian was saying, like I started this book out younger than Kaladin when I read it the first time, and now I'm older than Kaladin. And at the time, you don't think about it too much. You're just like, well, he's 19. Of course he can tell these grown men what to do. And then now I'm like, oh my gosh, if a 19-year-old in my slave barrack started telling me that we needed to like run around in the practice yard, I would be like, get out of my face, man.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
The other Bridgman's reactions make so much more sense now. It's like watching Disney movies as a kid versus Disney movies as an adult. And as an adult, you're just like, no, listen to your parents. Don't go marry the person you just met. I'm like, why are you such an idiot?
And I think that youthfulness is kind of a benefit to him too. You know, like he's seen a lot, but he is able to keep going and, you know, inspire these much older men who have probably been through some bad stuff, maybe some worse than him, but he's definitely seen as much as many of them at the very least, despite his age.
He's also very competent. I love reading his thoughts in terms of like how he's going to save the Bridgemen, working through the problem, the way that he thinks through what the needs are and how he can lead them in a way that's going to inspire them, that's going to, you know, get people on his team. He's just very smart and he's very intelligent when it comes to other people and knowing what he needs to do. And so that helps a lot to believe him as the reader and just enjoying who he is. You know, he's not just this plucky young kid that's like telling everybody what to do, because he knows what he's saying. And you can, as the reader, you can tell that he knows what the thing is to do. So that makes him, I think, easier to accept that.
I did like the moment where he saved them for the first time. You know, he's got some supplies and he saved Hauber and he saved Leighton, and it's not really changed anything. And he's kind of like, okay, what am I like? I've bought them more life potentially. I've shown them they can live, but what are they going to do with that life? That they've got nothing, and he can't figure out what to do. And then he has the moment where he realizes that he's going to start the whole tradition with Rock and the stew. And I love when they're out there and, you know, he's got like, you know, Teft clapping along, like he's kind of got his like 5 people that will listen to him, and he can just tell that he just feels like it's so forced. And I thought that was like a good moment, because like it is forced, and everyone's been in the situations where you're guys trying to like make the best of it, and it still works. And I'm not doing a great job explaining what I like about it, but it felt very real to me.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And it leads to the beautiful scene where later on they buy Rock the Razor, and I love that scene where
Rock.
Going off of Kaladin's intelligence, it's a recurring thing that of his surgeon training just like running through his mind. Like we see it in the slave caravan, like where he diagnoses like the sick slave, and then like as he is like delirious, he diagnoses what's going on with himself.
That's awesome.
That shows like his training, his intelligence, that like he can recall that stuff and process through it. And early on, it is a foreshadowing of like, well, he wasn't always a soldier. He had an education. Like, where did he get that? Until we get like the flashbacks and like, oh, like his father was a surgeon.
His medical knowledge was one of my favorite things this time, because it's such a beautiful, simple way that Brandon is able to put a lot of characterization in with literally like, you know, it's not even like sentences. It's like lists of like words that he's like thinking in his head, you know, like he's like just listing a couple of symptoms or listing a couple of like, you know, this is the way you treat this thing. And it's, you know, just a few words here and a few words there that totally like it does so much to explain that he is educated, that he's intelligent, that he's had some kind of training, that he has all this experience, that he's, you know, says something, the fact that he's able to like think through these things in these really stressful situations. It does so much with a couple of italicized words to explain who Kaladin is.
And it's so plot necessary too. Like if someone didn't have medical knowledge, like the whole thing would not come, like people would just be dying. You know, they wouldn't be able to do everything that they get away with. They would never have found the knobweed sap and all of that stuff. Like it is so crucial. And do we want to move on and kind of talk about him and Syl a little bit? Because I do feel like that's the other half of it.
yes.
Yeah. It's like,
I was just about to say that on the flip side, you've got Syl and, thinking a little bit about Kaladin's depression. And on the flip side, Syl's just childlike enthusiasm for everything. And the brightness that she brings to Kaladin is so much fun.
And it's like the growth of Syl over time is like the moment where she realizes she has a name, or Kaladin is very sarcastic, a trait he gets from his mother, which I love very much. There's one point where like he says something very sarcastic and like Syl frowns, and then he starts to explain that was sarcasm. Yes, that was sarcasm. She cocked her head. I know what sarcasm is. Then she smiled deviously. I know what sarcasm is. And I'm like, this sums up your character perfectly. I love you.
I know what sarcasm is.
Not a great thing to teach a win spren or an honor spren.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the immediate next line is Stormfather, Kaladin thought, looking into those gleeful little eyes. That strikes me as ominous. But I think that is so good for Kaladin because it is reminiscent like of his mother. I think it kind of restores a part of Kaladin that's been missing for a long time, because it's not something like he really got in the army, because it's a bunch of soldiers, very different environment. She brings a light to his life.
And I think another nice thing is that she's not hero worshipy at all. Like that's something that he has to deal with among his friends, that there are his friends, but he also saved all of their lives. And so there is like an element of reverence. And Syl does not have that. Syl is not reverent of Kaladin. And she definitely respects him and cares about him, but she is a peer in a way that some of the other ones just can't be, when they're like kind of kissing the ground that Kaladin walks on at various points.
And like she holds him to task to an extent.
Yeah.
Like, she pushes him.
As is her role, really. But yeah, I really liked as well when we meet her at the beginning, and he's kind of like, she's an inconvenience, really. Like he's just like, go away. Like I don't really want you around me at all. And even like just like halfway through the book, when they discover that Rock can see her, and Rock is very reverent of Syl, and Kaladin makes some comment along the lines of like, well, if you like him so much, well, why don't you just bother him all the time? And he's in his mind, he's thinking, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please stay.
And she's like, oh, yeah, like he's too respectful. Like I can't deal with that.
I love Syl is probably my favorite character of this book, because I don't know if it's just the playfulness that I love so much, or I love, though, that she also has her like serious moments of, Kaladin lies and she just kind of grumps at him, or when Kaladin takes Adolin's money and walks away and she's like, you shouldn't do that, and he's like, well, he should have stuck around and made sure I was willing to actually do what he said. And Syl's like, that's not right, and she like just pouts about it.
And then there's the scene at the end where she gets full size and is like, I remember what type of spren I am. Because like it's this earlier on, it's like he asked the questions like, are you a wind spren? It's like, no, which is like a huge question. I was like, okay, then what kind of spren are you? I am honor spren. And the recurring question of like, do spren create their attribute, or are they just attracted to it? Which is a philosophical question that is particularly relevant when you are an honor spren, I think.
And I think like the fun part about Syl's playfulness and joy is that when she gets solemn, it really becomes an impactful moment, where and an already really impactful scene where Kaladin is, wrestling with something inside of himself as well. Syl is there.
It's the same at the during the high storm, and then when he's recovering and she's like fighting off the death spren. Those moments when Syl is fierce and serious is really contrasts well with when she's playful.
I'm a Syladin ship.
I know you are.
I've been a Syladin shipper since the beginning, and they are so cute.
I will say she becomes less childlike more quickly than I remember.
Yes.
Which is always my main hang up with that, is I feel like very early on she is very childlike. But it's not my preferred outcome. I enjoy their dynamic, but I respect the opinion.
Bridge 4.
Bridge 4.
By the end, all of Bridge 4 is love. And I actually do. I say that slightly sarcastically, but thinking about it, familial love that is shown by the end of just this is a safe place is a wonderful thing to see.
One thing that did jump out to me this reread is that there's like 25 plus members of Bridge 4, which I feel like I always forget because there is that subset that get names. Like there's like the big ones like Teft and Rock and Lopin, and then the more minor ones like Pete and Dre and Leighton that are like the cameos of Brandon's friends. But there's
Then the red
we
shirts.
don't have 27 names of Bridge 4. I'm like, I guess like, yes, you are part of Bridge 4, not a member like anyone ever cares about, apparently, because no one ever refers to you by name, which like from a storytelling perspective is important because 25 names is a lot and more than a reader really wants to deal with.
Well, and it is hard because people are dying and being replaced constantly too. So like they're like, Lopin isn't in that original 25, he comes later. So it is a little bit of a churn, especially in the first book.
I have to say, I like Lopin in this book a lot more than I like remember. I'm not a person that despises Lopin, but he's not my favorite character. Brandon tends to have these kind of characters in his books that have a certain type of humor that are not my favorite. But Lopin was a lot less weird and goofy than I remember him being in this book.
Yeah, he's also there a lot less than I remember. I think I made the comment last episode that like for as much is in this book, there is not much here, as seems like it should be in my mind. Because like, oh yeah, like there's tons of Lopin, which like he's a fine character in small doses. I reached my limit with him very quickly, and I didn't reach that limit on this reread. It's like he was always like consistently delightful.
He's a lot less annoying than I also remember him. I am kind of a Lopin hater, but not in an angry way.
Yeah, not all characters can be for every person.
Exactly. And I think Brennan does, he definitely gets some complaints about the humor, but I think he does enough different takes on humor that usually at least some of it ends up working for you, but
something lands, even if it's not what another person might enjoy.
But I guess one thing that had struck out to me is like knowing where Bridge 4 end up, like it was kind of hard at the beginning where they're all like, hate Kaladin.
Oh yeah, you just want to slap them around a little bit and be like, no, trust him.
When Kaladin like makes the decision to like go back and try one more time, it's like the first bridgeman he encounters is Teft. I was like, oh yeah, I know Teft. And like, oh Teft, you're super grumpy here. Like just be you from the future where you're like okay with all of this.
I know. When in this chasm, when he does the kata for the first time, the immediate run up, they are basically just like screaming and jeering at him. And like, oh, I bet he's never picked up a spear, lordling. And I just had completely forgotten about that and could not believe could believe, but like was astounded to see it from these people.
So sticking to the Shattered Plains, we also have the lovely Dalinar Adolin camp and that side of things.
Yes. I don't have that many opinions about Dalinar on this reread. It's just like it's basic. Like he's never really been my favorite character. I like all of the characters around him a whole lot more than I like Dalinar. I didn't really forget much of what happened with him. Like it was all kind of like par for the course.
I had forgotten how kind of new this whole honorary thing felt to Dalinar at the beginning. Like there are a few moments where I kind of was reading and you could feel him, like especially in his POV, because Adolin's watching him, he's going, why are you like taking all these insults lying down? And when you're in Dalnar's POV, he is just desperately like clenching his mental fist, trying not to summon his shard blade and being like, nope, like this isn't what I do. This isn't what I do. And I'd forgotten that he was essentially that, unlike that much of a razor's edge at times. Like the moment when Sadeas calls Renarin useless, and he basically says like, do you want to start a civil war right now or do you not? Was an awesome moment. Like I had forgotten, and especially given how disrespectful Sadeas is of Dalinar, that when Dalinar really kind of like walks in and is like, okay, we're going to do this. Do you really want to do this? Sadeas backs down right away.
Surely I misheard you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like that is a great exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
One thing that stuck out to me this time was how much influence Dalinar has over Elhokar. Like it almost feels like Dalinar is really like the king of Elhokar at this point in the story. Mm-hmm. And because Elhokar's like his own power is very it's very tenuous. Like he does not have a whole lot, like he only has as much authority as the high princes are willing to give him. And Dalinar has so much influence on like all the important decisions that Elhokar, other than like when to throw the next feast and like when are we going to go on the next chasm fiend hunt or whatever. Like Dalinar seems to be the one making all the shots that it obviously that goes up another whole level at the end of the book when he marches in and kicks Elhokar around and he basically says I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
But even before that though, like. Yeah.
And yet he spends the entire time being like, no, Elhokar's a good king. Navani is like, my son's an idiot. And Dalinar puffs up and is like, don't insult the king. And Navani's like, chillax. But my son's an idiot.
Yeah, he has such a blind spot for
he
Elhokar.
Definitely does. And I think it makes a lot of sense why the other high princes are so threatened by him. Because if you see him basically be the power behind the throne aside from Sadeas, then why would you add to his coalition? Why would you? It's easier to kind of assume like, okay, I'm gonna align myself a little more with Sadeas, and especially since they're both colons.
And especially we hear a lot about the Blackthorn in this book.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really learn much about in this book. Just that we know Dalinar used to be a very scary person. And I think it's very natural for the high princes, like they still think he's that person, even though he's very much trying not to be. The high princes accuse him of being weak now, but they still remember what he was like. So they don't want him to be in a position of power if he reverts, because that would be very bad for them.
Mm-hmm. And especially given that he's acting so out of character, like they don't really know how to approach this Dalinar, and they know that Gavilar got like this in the end, and they didn't know what to do with that back then. Mm-hmm. So he is in kind of an interesting position where I understand, especially given the Alethi competitiveness culture, why they're not lining up to be Dalinar's best buddy. I do think that knowing that that Brandon expanded Adolin's role significantly to kind of externalize Dalinar's doubts about the visions and their authenticity, I think that was like obviously just such a killer decision, because I think it really makes the plot work.
Yeah, it's really like twofold. Once it makes Dalinar's character stronger because he doesn't have that inner conflict. Like he makes decisions and he goes forward, which is more interesting to read. But also it makes Adolin more of a character. Like there is that dynamic interplay. They're both grappling with the idea of the visions, and Adolin like pushes Dalinar, and Dalinar decides to abdicate, and Adolin's like, well, like that's not really what I wanted. And then there's the reveal of, well, the visions are real. It's like he's speaking in a dead language. Obviously something is happening. And Adolin's realization that like, oh, I was definitively wrong and I'm happy I was wrong. He does love his father. Like he wants to support his father. It just ends up in a happier configuration than it could have been. Could have been very messy.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And I forgot how angry and how tense his and Adolin's relationship was when they literally get into a shouting match in the gallery of maps and Adolin's screaming at him and everyone in the war camps knows this happened. I'm like, oh boy, I forgot about that. And this is not a good look when your son is saying the same thing all your enemies are saying.
Adolin is definitely a passionate man.
I am glad that like Sadeas's betrayal allows Adolin to be like a little bit right at the end, which is really refreshing. That it could have been like, you know, Adolin's casting all this doubt and then he's just like wrong, and then he looks like an idiot and he's a terrible son, and you know, and so on. It's nice that at least he like was a little bit sort of right, and he had some intuition that was not wrong, and it validates, I think, a lot of what they were going through without Dalinar. Also, you know, they're kind of both right. And so it helps me appreciate both of them more.
That's exactly right. And just how I think it does a good job showing that there is a cost to the sort of like trust and the way that Dalinar wants to engage with the world. And it's that people can betray you, and that it's not like, oh, if only, like, you know, you just act like this, everything's going to go right. There will be people who will take advantage of that, and there are going to be losses associated with it. And even like, I think it's maybe not the very first Dalinar chapter, but one of the first ones, and they're talking about the idea of going out onto the plains, or an expedition on the plains, or high princes working together on the plains, and just how easy it would be for a betrayal to occur that would ruin everything. And I'm like, oh, there it is. There is a little, here's a peek at what's going to happen at the end of this book.
Going into like them both being right is that Dalinar's whole point was, I have to believe the visions are real, which is they are. But Adolin's whole point was, don't be using those visions to determine your actions in the present. Like, especially with Sadeas, like, I don't trust that, like, the visions are telling you to trust Sadeas. Well, we know they weren't. Dalinar thought they were. Adolin was right to say Dalinar was wrong in doing so. The way they were both right was interesting.
I like Navani. Oh, go ahead. Oh, it's still Aiden.
I was just about to.
I was like, if anyone's going to bring up Navani, it will be Ian.
We don't get a lot of Navani in this book, but she's just great. I love her.
Dalinar, I want to be alone with you. We can't be alone. Dalinar, we will be alone together. I say so. But we can't. No, I love her. She's...
Yeah, he's not very good at saying no to her.
No. And it's like, there's the very like sad scene where like he tells her to leave, and he has the inner monologue of like, oh, I wish she had pushed back just one more time, because like I would have given in. And it's like, oh, those two, favorite Stormlight ship, even though I don't really care for Dalinar as a character. he makes Navani happy.
I did love that he immediately defaults to calling her big sister, like the moment she shows up, and I'm like, man, you could not have picked a less sexy term than, oh, what's up, older sister? Hello.
Well, he does that partly to try and convince himself into. He's like, she's my older sister. She's my older sister. She's my older sister. Not, I can't be with her. She's my older sister. He just trying to convince himself that he's over her. And
but that is kind of how society views them, because at the end, when Sadeas is describing what happened, like he refers to Dalinar as her brother, not her brother-in-law. It's like, oh, like, yeah.
And it is
not something I ever really noticed, I think.
And it is like, if you are a person looking at Dalinar like he is a threat and like seizing power, him like kind of pushing the king down and then striking up a relationship with the king's mother, the old queen, is not. It's another like red flag. If this guy's trying to make himself king, he's furthering his connections and like ties to the throne. I always am interested when he is writing to Yasta via the SpanRead, and Yasta essentially tells him to keep Navani at arm's length. That always, when I read the book the first time, I was expecting a betrayal from her. Because Yasna is so wise and so right that I was just like, oh, Yasna says that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. And I'm always kind of curious where that came from. And I know that they don't have the best relationship sometimes, but
yeah. And like Dalinar like consistently thinks of her like, oh, Navani is a political creature. But like then there's like the through line of, if she gives you her word, like you can trust it. A lot of Navani's reputation, I think, comes from like the people outside of her family, and she's a very different person like for her family. And we see a lot of one side of that and not very much of the other.
Well, and she's also different in that she's no longer married to I cannot pronounce his name right now. Gavilar. And she's no longer the queen. Like, so the person that it's just like Dalinar used to be the Blackthorn and no longer is. She's not constrained to the person that she used to be.
Yeah, but it did come from Yasna though, so it came from someone who knew her well. So that did give me like I would ask Brandon to this day what was going on with that, because it is like it's not like out of character, but I always wonder what was going on there. And the political creature thing I agree with, but it always felt to me like a negative way. But she she's great and she uses her political connections and her spy networks for Dalinar, so it's really only a benefit. But I always kind of thought there was a danger there that never really presented itself.
That is a really good point. And now I'm curious. Navani's a good read of character. I wonder how much she knows of Dalinar and Navani's true feelings for one another. Like, was she trying to keep them apart?
Oh, I'm sure she knows. She must know. Everybody knows, and she knows better than most about everything.
No, that's weird. Don't want them getting together. Need to make him suspicious of her.
Mm-hmm. Or even like that's not good for Elhokar, or maybe that might not be good for Alethkar.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious though for her to witness a burn from her own daughter when she was not aware that she was in the room. That was pretty funny.
Speaking of Yasna and her personality, I loved reading through this again, just seeing how emotional Yasna actually gets. Like I always remember her as just being very serious, but like towards the end, the emotion that she displays when she's like, I am the reason that you tried to commit suicide and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just really good to see Yasna having personality even this early in.
That and like her anger at Shallan's betrayal. It's like, I like opened myself up to you and this is how you treat me. Because like she doesn't do that for very many people. So it has to hurt her so much.
For sure. And I think I had forgotten how much of her decision to take Shallan as a ward was an emotional decision, really. Mm-hmm. With Shallan just she was not the best candidate, an actual sort of a resume type way. Mm-hmm. But she makes it an appeal, and Yasna does something that I think is outside what at least externally people think of as being her character, where she's very logical and very rational, and she feels like she does something on faith a little bit in that moment, and I think that makes it hurt even a little more.
Mm-hmm. So I was something I don't think this is a spoiler for the next book, because it's implied at the end of this one, and it's something that's very early in the next book at the very least, is that when she accepts Shallan, there's a moment where she seems to be talking to her Spren maybe. And so I kind of wonder if that was part of it, like there was a more than just Yasna going in on that decision.
Oh, when was that?
You pull up the quote. Dang, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it.
That's all good. Like, I mean, it's not super. Like, if later you find it, I would love to see it just out of personal curiosity. But
yeah, I'll have to look a little bit further. It might be when she finally accepted Shallan, but it also might have been when she said for Shallan to come back, or I might be thinking of something from the end of the book where she decides to. Now I'm saying this, I'm thinking maybe it's from that when she decides to like bring Shallan in and trust her fully and tell her all of her secrets or whatever. I think there's a moment there maybe where she kind of nods, but there's interesting that there's another dynamic there about Yasna that you don't really know until the very end of the book, and don't really see until, what comes after. But
I do enjoy that the theft of the Soulcaster was a legitimate, as Brandon would say, she was legitimately hornswoggled by the fact that Shallan had stolen that Soulcaster, because it would have been very easy for it to be like, Yasna knew all along and she was 2 steps ahead, and that wouldn't be crazy to believe, but it is kind of fun to see someone pull one over on Yasna for once.
We kind of get that reveal twice, because the first one, it's as Shallan is like actively dying. So it's like, we don't really see Yasna's reaction, but the reveal of like, oh, I stole it the night you killed all of those men. And like, wait, really? That was like so long ago. What? What?
I do think that Yasna is, I would say, like a Wraithen class character, though. Like Brandon she is one of the most compelling characters in this book, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I think, not that Shallan is not, but I think she does a good job making Shallan's chapters even more exciting, because they always do feel a little more remote being in a second location.
Yes, Yasna is definitely, for the Stormlight archive as a whole, like one of the major players. Speaking of Shallan, she was also in this book. It is always interesting coming back to Way of Kings and seeing like the beginnings of her character, because I feel like she grows a lot over time.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that like Kaladin does. Like Kaladin like develops as a character, but like it's more overcoming obstacles rather than like having to mature. He's done his maturing. Now he just has to deal with his issues, basically. Whereas Shallan like has to deal with her issues and also like become a functioning adult, because she didn't exactly get that growing up, seeing the baseline of where she starts out.
Mm-hmm. I definitely thought that when in that non-Balat POV, I was really thinking, I'm like, like it's really, she didn't have to have a brother go with her, but it is a little bit, I'm like, man, none of them wanted to come with her. Like no one was like, okay, us two are going. Shallan, you've basically never been off the grounds unaccompanied before. And they're all just kind of hanging around, like puppeting their dad's, like, not really his corpse, but like a little bit, like nobody wanted to come along with her. Like, and they're all pretty messed up too, but it's not like Shallan doesn't have her own burden she's dealing with. So it's a pretty incredible like moment of bravery that I feel like you almost don't appreciate, because it happens before you see her on screen, but she really, really puts herself out there. And a very bold plan too. I was like, you couldn't have stolen a local soulcaster? You decided to go for a foreign king's sister?
Well, I don't think they know where there's another soulcaster. So Yasna is the only person who publicly has a soulcaster that isn't an ardent.
I know. That's kind of the thing, though, is I'm like, you can go to like, people know that there are ardents that have them. I would would have taken a shot at that first, but she's a bold thinker.
And she did. I mean, it is important to remember that she did like think that that Yasna had already accepted her. Like she showed up thinking like, oh, all I got to do is show up and I'll be her ward. Like, so she didn't, like, she wrote Yasna this letter and then was kind of proceeding forward, assuming that this was all kind of lined up and was going to work out for her.
That's a good point.
If she had known that she was going to have to go show up and petition, it was going to be this long shot to even get there, then she probably would have just abandoned that idea. I guess you could make the argument that it's maybe at some point she maybe could have given up and figured, hey, I'll try stealing some other one. But
and there's Yasna's position as an outsider as well, where it's like, it's possible she could be lauded for stealing a soulcaster from a heretic, should everything come out. Because she's definitely pretty devout in this book, which is something I've forgotten
is definitely devout. That's Vorinism definitely plays a large role in this book. Largely because of Shallan. It gets touched on a little bit in Dalinar, but mostly Shallan and Kabsal being an Ardent. We get our full exploration of all of that stuff.
You have to wonder how much of it came from, I guess, her upbringing. Like she's still trying to figure out who she is in the world. She's trying to figure out what does she like, because she's been she's stuck, trapped trying to help her family. She wants to study with Yasna, but I can't. I've got to help my family. I've got to steal the soulcaster and get back to them despite what I want. And so I think she's still really trying to figure out who she is at this point. And she's young.
And I think you can have multiple motivations and not be honest with yourself about them as well. I think she would very much like to be Yasna's ward. And there's a part of her that's like, well, maybe I don't steal the soulcaster and I'm just Yasna's ward and everything works out anyway, which is actually what happens. But I think she can be like, my plan is definitely to steal the soulcaster. Well, obviously also hoping that that's not what happens a little bit.
Yeah.
I do think that one of my favorite parts about Shallan's character arc is that she comes to a point where she has decided to not steal the soulcaster and then gets that one little bump from Yasna where she's like, you know what, she almost steals it out of spite, which is, I thought, a really fun place. They did a good job, Brennan did a good job raising our respect for Yasna, so we kind of come to agree with Shallan she shouldn't steal it from Yasna, and then and then we end up in a pretty interesting spot, I think.
And we just get like Shallan like respects Yasna so much. She enjoys learning. This book is good. I like this book. For all like I said, I'm excited to see what's to come. I did genuinely enjoy this book. Do we want to talk about Capsule at all? Because like their whole Shallan kind of has a romance in this book that was very foolish.
I love that Shallan is still young enough. Like, it's interesting to Shallan's character that she's still young enough to kind of have a crush, but she's smart enough to recognize when that crush starts getting starts being like, well, I can leave the Ardentia. And she's like, whoa, hold on there, boy. Let's think about this for a second here.
Mm-hmm. That felt really honest, that she's kind of, like wanting to be involved with him, but not wanting to really deal with what all that would mean. And I still always wonder how much affection he really harbored for her, because I think it wasn't none. I don't think he was like head over heels in love with her, but I do think he enjoyed her company.
I definitely think there was something because of his insistence at the end for her to eat some of the strawberry jam that was no longer strawberry jam. Part of that was like self, but like he generally didn't want her to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed like the order there was he gave it a good shot with Shallan, and he was like, okay, she's not going for it. I'm going to eat this gross slime and run away. And unfortunately, so he was like, at the end, it was about him. He would have liked to have helped her, but I felt like his motivations at his core were a little more selfish.
Well, it's like he ate it and still was trying to get her to eat it. Because it's not too bad.
Yeah,
and, like
he hasn't
gave her
come
final
out.
desire and he tried to run.
Yeah, he doesn't come out and say that. Like he could be like, Shallan, you will die unless you eat this. He's not willing to really like kind of like essentially put his life on the line as an assassin of Yasna Kholin to save Shallan. He'll help her if he can, but he's about Capsule at the end.
Also going off of like Shallan's not refusal but resistance was like she's dealing with the whole thing with her father being dead and like their house in danger. Like, oh, like I can't bring you into this. Like I just met you. It's like I can't trust you with all of this. Like you might betray us. What benefit would a man who just recently left the Ardentia be to my family? None.
Probably. Yeah, that would actually be a drag on the house.
I do love how, what's the word I'm looking for? How cutthroat she is about those, the decision. She kind of has a crush on him, but when it comes down to it, the crush, it doesn't come into play when she's thinking things through. When she's thinking things through, she is thinking about like, how much will you really benefit my family and things?
I did actually wonder this time if he knows more about her than he lets on, because you find out at the end that he's involved with the group called the Ghost Bloods, and you know that Shallan's father was in some way connected with this group, and there was the guy that controlled their soulcaster that was part of the Ghost Bloods, and so like there's a part of me that's wondering like, does Capsule know who she is or anything about her that isn't readily apparent, because there's a connection there. It's possible that they're just, that Capsule is disconnected from Luesh and there's not something that he knows, but it's also possible that he does know something and just isn't letting on.
I think that's true. I think that he definitely could. And that does remind me as well of the moment where Yasna like knows Shallan's stepmother's full name. And Shallan's like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh, like either this family is very notable or Yasna's been doing her homework and like reaching out to her contacts. Is that people are very interested in Shallan's family.
But I think it makes sense because by that point, Shallan had already petitioned her to become her ward. So Yasna is the kind of person that's like would have looked into like, okay, who's this random girl that just sent me a letter? Like, got to do some research. Like,
yeah,
is she a crazy person?
Oh yeah.
Should I even like consider this? She did enough that allow her to petition, obviously. But at the beginning, I would doubt Capsule knew too much. By the end, I feel like he would have gotten in contact with somebody and like eventually something would have made his way to him. I don't know how much impact it actually would have had.
He was surprised to see her. Like the first time he walked in to the Vale, I recall him being like, "Oh, like I'm sorry, I thought this was Yasna's," and like that could be an act. But I could very much see him being like, he is out here doing his Yasna spy / assassination Ghostblood plot, and suddenly someone else shows up and he's like, "Who is this?" And he like reaches out to his Ghostblood contacts, and they're like, "Let me tell you who you have just met."
I definitely think that's what's more likely to be going on. He wasn't surprised because like, oh, Shallan Davar is in this room. It's like, random girl is in this room. Like, who is this? How can I use her to my benefit?
This is another Shallan thing, but it's popped into my head a little bit. One thing that we did get from the erstwhile Way of Kings annotations, Brandon, there's like 10 of them or so. So they're fun to read. It's not the full book, but Brandon mentions that one of the things that he's doing with Shallan's character is that her father has a little of an anger issue, and that crops up in Shallan periodically as well. And I was watching for it this time, and it does seem like every time she just like cannot keep her words to herself, or somebody like pisses her off, that's when she kind of goes off. Like especially with the bookseller, like she's trying to get a good deal, and then he's kind of like, "Let me get you a romance novel," and she's like, "Oh boy, here we go." Let me lay things straight here for you, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think I have
picked up on that, but that'll be fun to notice the next time I read through it.
Do you guys like Shallan's humor? And it's like a very divisive thing in the fandom of like whether if Shallan is funny to you or just annoying.
Like I do find her amusing. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the correct word. I rarely like find myself laughing out loud at it, but I think she's like passably amusing. Like I wouldn't find her annoying in the book or in real life, but she's not at like a light song level for me where I really enjoyed it, even though I think that some people also didn't like that. So what about you, Josh?
I like it a lot. I don't know. It works for me. She I would say it's for me, it's more than just amusing most of the time. Some of her jokes don't land as well as others, but
her humor works for me better than Lopin's does.
For sure. And she does have funny moments. I think what happens is she gets on like a train and then she goes really far with it. And you're like, okay, Shallan, like we can let go of this hypothetical about what you ingest, like impacting, she's just on this long tangent where she's making fun of this guy. But no, I think all in all, it's not cringeworthy, or I enjoy it.
I definitely agree that like she takes it to extremes, which is the comment Yasna makes. It's like, you need to like learn to rein in your tongue, like not to like not say those things, but to like say them with thought. So do we want to move on to the Hearthstone contingent?
Sure.
Get some flashbacks in.
Talk about Kaladin and his family and
baby Kaladin, who is
he's never really like he's so mature for his age. Like even from like, it's funny to me that like Kaladin, like at the beginning of his flashbacks, a lot of times feels like more mature than like Tien at the end. Like when Tien is older than he was at the start, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because there is this parallel of like Kaladin being particularly tall, like throughout, and like being very mature, contrasted with Tien, who is like, people always think he's younger than he is. He's smaller than, but he's very insightful in some ways. Like, I don't necessarily want to say like he's childish, but like the dichotomy of the two brothers, like it is interesting.
Yeah, like Tien is supposed to make a chair and he makes a carved horse, and Kaladin is like dutifully learning surgery. Like there is, they have their own little characteristics there.
So I was going to say they complement each other really well, but it's almost like it's not just like it's a necessity for Kaladin that he has this brother. And I think that his parents complement him well as well. His dad it's really fun to see like the pieces of Kaladin that like came from his dad, that he got from his dad, and the pieces from his mom, because there's very clear things there where you can see like he is the child of these people. And I think his mother is a delight every time. Like I want more scenes with Kaladin's mom because she is fantastic. And I really like Lirin in this book. He's an interesting character. I love that he actually like stole the spheres. Like
Mhm.
he's not just this kind of do-gooder, you know. He's so single-minded on like being a good surgeon and like helping people that it would have been easy to like fall into this, you know, he's just like this good guy character that does all the right things and is the, you know, this moral purist. And so it's really cool that he, you know, he did something ethically questionable.
But in the same moment when he almost lets Rashone die, like
Mhm.
like that to me was just such a great character moment where you can see like basically Liren's highest ideal, you know, protecting people. He is treating people for free, which is something I always forget. And they just are kind of like, hopefully someone sends us donations.
Yep.
And he is so like, I love the moment where he is basically got his greatest obstacle to all his goals that is like dying on the table in front of him. And if he just does nothing, everything will be much better for him. And he looks at his son and draws strength from that and sticks to his guns. And that's a great moment.
And it's like how different their lives would have been if he had just let Rashone die.
Yeah. Oh, it would have been completely different and like probably happier, you know, at least in the short term.
Like there's a decent chance like Kaladin would have ended up marrying Laurel. Like
Kaladin would, logically, if you trace it through, Tien wouldn't go to war, so Kaladin wouldn't go to war. So Kaladin would end up a surgeon. So he comes back to Hearthstone. And I don't know about marrying Laurel, but, you know, at that point, you've got a second surgeon in Hearthstone, or it kind of then depends on what his life is like in Cabral. You know, does he decide to go off and go to a different city, or does he go back to Hearthstone?
At the very least, like he's not going to end up on the Shattered Plains in a bridge crew, which means Dalnar dies.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
There is a great like piece of fanfic, and I will have to either dig it up or ask Feather about it because I'm sure she knows, where Kaladin goes to Hearthstone, becomes a surgeon, gets brought into.
I'm pretty sure that was written by Feather.
Was it by Feather?
I'm pretty sure that's one of Feather's.
I've got like a line in my head between her and that piece of, and it's not very long, but it is just a fun little parallel tangent where they're like, all right, you're joining the hospital murderers, and Kellen's like, I don't think I am, and I'm pretty sure he dies.
Yeah, I never read it, but I'm pretty sure that's one of Feather's.
I thought the idea was going to be that he like becomes a surgeon and then ends up like on the Shattered Plains, like as a surgeon.
That, I mean, and you know, that could too, depending on what we think about destiny in the Cosmere. But
yeah. Anyway, that's the next episode.
Let's see. Other Hearthstone people. Rashone is the worst.
Yeah.
Really he's scum. Utter scum.
And just that he has Laurel engaged to his son and then is like, oh, yeah, lost. That's just the most like the grossest, most like self-interested decision that you could possibly make. And it's important because he is the light eye. He's one of the light eyes that teaches Kaladin what he thinks light eyes are, you know.
I just looked it up and it is from Feather. It's called Beneath the Bells of Kharbranth.
There we go.
That's awesome.
Heck yeah. We'll have to like link that or something.
So speaking of the hospitals in Kharbranth, shall we talk about Taravangian and Seth? And
yes, Taravangian, great character. Hate him as a person.
Yeah, I do like that. I think that he is really well done. Like the secret of what he's holding is really like he's so unassuming. It's a really fun surprise at the end when he turns out to be. I mean, it turns out to be a lot more to him than you expected. So it's hard to really even like judge him at this point because, well, it's hard to know what to think about him at this point because there's obviously so much more there. Like it's this tip of the iceberg kind of thing where do I even know who this person is anymore?
Yeah, I think that it's fun that we get a similar experience to, I think, the characters in the book where we, you just underestimate Taravangian. Everything tells you that he's the king of Kharbranth, but Jasna Kholin as a princess outranks him in real terms because nobody cares about Kharbranth, and just how often, especially in their conversation with Yasna about Faith when he's eating with Shallan and Yasna that one time. Like the whole setup of that is like, oh, Yasna's going easy on him, or you should, like that they need to be kind, and that he's not really able to make a good argument. Like they really, really just like stack it up. So you're like, this guy is just not worthy of paying attention to, basically.
The implication is like, oh, like he's just the king of this random place. Like we have to deal with him while we're here. Whereas like, no, like Brandon's having scenes with him because he's important. Going forward, he is a mastermind villain murdering a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. Before the reveal, I never would have guessed that he appeared in another book. Like I would, or like at least in a meaningful way.
And like the foreshadowing, like of the hospitals, like consistently throughout, it's ascribed to him in particular, starting all of that. It's not like Kharbranth had been doing this for like since it existed. It's like, no, like he made an effort to start all of these hospitals, become known for helping the sick. And then the reveal at the end is like, oh yeah, he did that so he could find terminal patients to exsanguinate.
And not to terminal patients.
And not to terminal patients as necessary.
Well, and I love the punch of the, you've got all of these death rattles, and we know what a death rattle is, but you don't really think about where all of the collection is coming from. You've got the commentary of this one is of particular note and things, and you're like, okay, whatever. And then you get this scene at the end that is like, oh, that's how they are collecting that. Oh.
And it's like the subtle thing of like, they record seconds before death. So it's like, obviously they know to start timing something if they can get that measurement of time. Terrifying. But yeah, you don't think about it. Like it's just this random epigraph thing. It's like, oh, like, wonder what that means. And then you find out exactly how that all happens. It's like, oh, this is even more terrible than I could have imagined.
Is the death rattle of I know what you guys are doing and I'm not giving you what I see an epigraph, or is that one from...
That is an epigraph.
Yeah.
I love that one. Is probably one of my favorites because it's just like, screw you guys.
Yeah, like that one is like the remarks has like, this one is useless, basically.
We
I will not tell you the things I see.
I love that Taravangian's like monstrosity is compared to Szeth. Like Szeth shows up, it's like Szeth has his own like whole baggage of being like this kind of crazy guy with that has this really, I don't know how you describe Szeth's mess, but it's fun that like you think Szeth is this awful person, and then he comes in and meets Taravangian, and Taravangian has this whole like another level of awful.
And that's the other half of the reveal, really. That's so fun. Is the whole time you're like, what? Who is sending Szeth on this? And you're like nervous because like that whole chapter, you're like, oh, he's gonna kill Taravangian, and I like this guy. Like that's a bummer. And it just inverts so completely.
Did you kill my guards? I'm here to kill you. Did you kill my guards? I don't know. I'm here to kill. I don't know. I tried not to.
Well, and that's the other thing about Taravangian is like he's doing this awful thing, but then he's like also concerned about his guards. Like he's just like this really interesting person.
He's trying to do like the least amount of bad that he can. It always feels like he's not glorying in it. He is a fascinating character, but he's not trying to like sacrifice lives that he doesn't feel he has to. But he's not afraid to sacrifice lives,
and he's not afraid to get his own hands dirty.
Yeah, he's not afraid to get his own hands dirty. He will, if he finds a tool, he will use the tool, whether it's Szeth, whether it's bleeding people out to get information from them.
I'm wondering how it is that Taravangian finds out about what Szeth, because thinking about it, he knows he knows that Szeth is like, Szeth himself says that having a shard blade makes him dangerous, but he's more dangerous because of his own just general knowledge of how to kill and things. And Taravangian has that knowledge of knowing that Szeth is dangerous as a murderer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is an interesting question that he successfully locates him in Bavland and finds, like it's a pretty well done thing. And I mean, it could be informed via death rattle. Like that could be that they were pointed at something that Taravangian was able to extrapolate from. But it's hard to know, especially at this stage in the series, where that came from.
Definitely.
Seth, I just never really care for. He's fine, but I feel bad
where I am.
But I never find him incredibly interesting. I'm sorry to all the Seth fans. I'm sorry, Feather. He's fine, but I kind of at the end of the day consider him to be a coward in like my own philosophy, where he just kind of is willing to sort of do the thing where he is like, well, I'm just a tool. Yeah.
It's difficult to be sympathetic to his mindset of, well, this is my culture and I have to like do these things because this is what I believe. It's difficult to be sympathetic to that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially when rightfully so, like you kill so many people, you start to lose it, I think. But when he starts like blaming them for not being able to kill him, I'm like, I get how that might make sense where you're at, but like the sympathy is not showing up on my end, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's like all of Seth's whole character makes sense in terms of his situation rationally. It's just not sympathetic, and it doesn't make me like him.
I think a lot of what Szeth is doing in this book is giving a little bit of showing off some magic, because we don't get a lot of that anywhere else. So I think that's part of his role, is Brandon kind of saying like, look, I know this book is like setting up a lot of things and I'm trying to like build up to it, but here's something that you can look forward to, that this is going to be some fun action that you'll see more of.
And it's like a cool mystery.
Yep.
Like why he's doing what he's doing. That's cool.
And it keeps Shinovar in our minds. That is an important part of Roshar. Like we go to see it, and it's like, Shinovar is Earth-like. That's weird. It's kind of hanging a lantern on it. It's like, this will be important in the future. So just having a Shin character recurring just keeps that lantern burning.
Shinovar has felt important since the beginning, and I think you're exactly right about why.
Any other thoughts on any other characters?
I don't think so.
Yalb? No Yalb chatter?
I mean, Yalb is great.
Yalb is great. There are some fun side characters. I enjoyed Yalb quite a bit.
Renarin didn't really talk about much.
Renarin.
Like Renarin is great. Like,
yeah,
he very much flies under the radar in this book. You kind of have to dig in to like see the interesting things with him.
Yeah,
which like I know I didn't really pick up on Renarin being awesome until reading Feather rave about him back in the pre-Words of Radiance days.
Yeah, when he charges onto the plains during the Chasm Fiend hunt, I think that's a really good moment where you can really feel that he's got this pressure from this Alethi culture about like how he's supposed to behave, and he wants to fulfill that, but he just doesn't. It doesn't quite ever work out how he hopes, and anytime he tries, he ends up getting like shamed for it, essentially, which is a bummer.
Yeah, it's like there is this culture impetus to be a certain way, and he tries to be that certain way, and everybody tells him no. And it's like, and it like that is very difficult for him. Society is telling me one thing, and you're not letting me try. Like,
yeah,
and you're not really like understanding what you're doing when you tell me no.
And it just gets a lot of there are a lot of paths for Renarin. The Ardentia is a responsible way to go. And Renarin's like, thanks.
But like, Renarin is son of the Blackthorn. He's going to be a certain way.
My favorite Renarin scene is probably with the fact that he outwits Hoyd. As, what about you, young Renarin? Can you say anything or not say anything? And I love that it shows the fact that he thinks differently from everybody around him.
And like there's the other like Hoyd line where like Hoyd is teasing him basically. It's like, oh, like Renarin's like made the decision like, well, I'm not going to give you any, I'm just going to shut up, not give you any fuel. And Hoyd has the whole thing about like, oh yeah, like I was out like with like two sisters like Oh, I'm sorry. It was actually 3. Like Renarin had 2. And Dalinar calls him out on it. And like on his way out, like gives the aside. It's like, I only like tease like the people who deserve it or who could benefit from it. Because like that one is stronger than you know. It's like, yes, he is. Like,
and I really like that. I like he and Adolin's relationship. They're very close. They don't have. He's a jock. I'm a nerd. Like we always we never get along. Like I think right after Dalinar and Adolin have their fight, like Dalinar is talking to Renarin and he says something and Renarin basically goes, "Well, Adolin thinks you're crazy," or like something like that, and he just like instantly kind of like going for Adolin's position. And that's where it's got the great line where I can't remember what it was. Like Renarin is known for felling conversations like archers fell men on a battlefield.
that is a great line.
Yeah.
I feel that line so much because there have been so many conversations where I will say something and then it's just like crickets afterwards and you're like, well, that's the end of that conversation.
Another thing, just like from a more meta perspective, like I do like the recurring theme of brothers in this book because we have Kaladin and Tien, we have Adolin and Renarin, and we have Gavilar and Dalinar. And their relationships are all like very different from each other, but all are still very brotherly, looking at different facets of this very common relationship, which I like.
Thank you for watching. You can find us at 17shard.com for all the news, discussion, theories, and the fun that you could ever want. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. You can leave us a review on iTunes. You can subscribe on YouTube. And you can support us on Patreon. See you next time. Bye.
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 Peace.